news tonight for Bill de Blasio. The New York City mayor's poll numbers are up, and two of his biggest problems have just been knocked down. Then the White House unveils its blueprint for America, and it's got lots of people seeing red. Programs for the poor would be cut, the EPA would be gutted, but defense and homeland security spending would surge. Also, a federal judge has just blocked President Trump's newest travel ban, so of course President Trump attacks the judge. But once again, it's his own words that seem to have sunk his plan. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in again tonight for Richard French, and there is more good news tonight for Bill de Blasio. We've already told you about the latest poll showing his approval rating has just hit 50%. That's the highest it has been in more than a year. But this one is even bigger. Both the state and federal probes into the New York mayor and his aides have now wrapped up with no charges filed. The separate investigations were focusing on his fundraising practices and also whether there was any pay-for-play going on where people or companies got political favors in return for donations. Turns out any allegations were all smoke and no fire, at least according to prosecutors. So the question is, does this hand Bill de Blasio a second term? Let's introduce our panel to sound off on this and many other topics tonight. Richard Brodsky is with us. Richard, you might know, is a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman. Richard is also a senior fellow at Demos. Richard is also Professor Richard at NYU. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, student.
Next to him is Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. And on the other side of the table, Bill O'Reilly, former Republican strategist, who is still a strategist, but is now a member of the Conservative Party. Gentlemen, as always, welcome. And Dominic, I never start with you on these things. I'm starting with you tonight. Did Bill de Blasio just win himself a second term?
No, he didn't. The path is a lot clearer. The path.
Thank you, Dominic.
But here's why I say this. Remember, folks thought I was crazy when I predicted that a guy with a lot of youth. Okay, well, when I predicted a guy with a lot of money would become mayor of New York City. His name was Michael Bloomberg. I am telling you that that de Blasio's path just became a lot clearer. You don't want to be indicted in an election year. But here's why I say it's not necessarily so, Mr. Whitman. Scathing reports from the district attorney and from the feds. So that means somebody with a Paul Massey or somebody like that with a lot of money, you better believe the commercials are going to be starting to be worked on right now. They're going to quote verbatim what the prosecutors said. They cleared him criminally, but they did not clear his conduct.
Bill O'Reilly, you're let me get this right. You're an advisor to the Massey campaign?
Yes, that's right.
So we get that out of the way early enough. Is that the game plan? Go through that report and that's...
What I was going to say was that the man who loves to sleep in will sleep better tonight. You know, I mean, he doesn't get up early enough in the morning. But anyway, yes, he did.
Sounds like a shot at Mayor de Blasio.
He did dodge a bullet here. He dodged a bullet. I think Dominic is right. There's plenty of language out there that's damaging to him. What this probably ensures is that Mayor de Blasio will win the Democratic primary. It looked like he would anyway.
If there is one.
But, you know, if he had been indicted, he probably would have been out, and that's not going to happen now.
The better way to look at this is that the only thing that could have stopped his reelection were criminal charges, and those didn't occur. I'm not a great fan of the election campaign finance systems we have. I don't care if it's the mayor, the governor, Congress, Senate, county executive. But to try to manufacture a scandal out of this one, if that's all you got, tell him to save his money.
We get lots more.
May be. Well, so then what is the take? What should we be thinking as what de Blasio did with this fundraising? And some of this was political action fundraising, raising money to back some of his agenda.
I gotta say, I never really cared about the criminal charges. I mean, they were out there. If he got indicted, he got indicted. But that probably would have removed him for the election, and you'd have another Democrat running that doesn't have that baggage. So there was no real advantage there. I mean, I think the question of Mayor de Blasio is the work ethic, is the like homelessness getting out of control, the quality of life issues, those type of issues.
So you don't think these investigations are going to be a factor?
I mean, I think they put a pretty good dent in him, and the language is there that yes can be used in ads. But I think it's whether New York is moving forward or whether it's stepping backwards from the progress that it made for 20 years.
He's right about what people care about, and that's one of the reasons why his numbers are getting better. He kept his promise on pre-K. He kept his promise on stop and frisk. He botched some of the homeless stuff, and he's accountable for that. You can have a real debate about that. And in the end, that's what Mike Bloomberg did. It wasn't just his billions. It was that he had an argument about competence and the vision of the city.
Dominic, should I assume that one of the things we'll see as a result of the lack of charges against de Blasio, as announced today, is that it will greatly reduce, if not eliminate, the other Democrats who get in the race for a primary against him? Do you think he's going to face a primary at this point?
I agree with the points that were made by Bill, and he's right. What this did today, okay, I agree with you too, Mr. Brodsky.
Oh, can't we all just get along?
What this did today was clear the path in a Democratic primary. What all the candidates, potential candidates, have told me privately is this is what they all say. Publicly, they say nice things about him. But all of them say privately that he's unlikable, that they feel they could beat him, but they don't want to, but he has a lock on the black vote. A lock, and they can't get around that. And so thus, he is unbeatable in the primary. But again, I've seen enough of these things. Rudy the second time, Bloomberg, you cannot, yes, the city is overwhelmingly Democratic, but if you got the right candidate with the right message and a general election, they can shake things up.
That's fair enough, but who's the Democrat who would get into the race at this point now? You think
it would be suicide. If you're a Democrat,
he's still looking?
Dan Garodnick.
Okay.
Love Dan Garodnick.
He's a
great
city
candidate.
councilman. He's bright. He's from Manhattan. But you can handicap the horse race all you want. There's got to be a fundamental message. And in a Democratic primary, Bill de Blasio can say, I promised you I'd make progress on traffic, I did. I promised you I'd make progress on stop and frisk, I did. On pre-K, I did. What's the fundamental argument? That he's not likable by reporters like Dominic?
Hang on, Bill, what's the fundamental argument?
The fundamental argument is that he's let the city had a lead going after 20 years of good administration, and it's lost the lead. You can feel it on the streets. You can see it in the subway stations on the street every day. You've got 60,000 people in homeless shelters and tens of thousands of others that you can't even count on the streets. New York has clearly taken a step back, and people sense that. The quality of life is
on homelessness, you can make a case, and he's botched it to an extent, and he's dealt with it to an extent. But if that's the argument, Bill, what do you say about stop and frisk? What do you say about universal pre-K? What do you say about a safer city?
Well, the universal pre-K hasn't been fully rolled out. What I would say is that de Blasio he doesn't get to work on time enough. You have all these agencies that are failing.
I asked you a question about 3 issues.
Yeah.
What's the response to when he says, I modified stop and frisk?
I think it's clear on crime. You had Mayors Giuliani and Bloomberg set up a very good system. The CompStat system is very good, and de Blasio benefited from it. No question about it.
Meanwhile,
that's why he doesn't win.
Meanwhile, the poll that we showed you with de Blasio's approval numbers, they also showed de Blasio with a big lead over Massey, at least by more than 30 points at this point, and that's in a 6-to-1 Democratic ratio city. So, and there you see the latest poll numbers. Paul Massey also has some name recognition problems. A lot of New Yorkers don't know who he is just yet.
Right, he hasn't spent $1 on advertising yet. If you remember, the last Republican that ran got 24% on election day. Massey's at 25, hasn't spent a dime on advertising. So it's very, very early in the race. You can get known quickly in New York. If he can raise the money, and he can, he'll make a
Unless he
run.
has something to say, having money and name recognition won't help him.
Well, I just disagree a little bit with history on my side. With all due respect to Mike Bloomberg, he didn't have much to say, but he had billions to spend. And those same polls, you can't go by polls in some cases. The same polls showed Bloomberg trailing drastically against who was going to come out of the Ferrer Mark Green primary.
He's at like 32% late.
Right,
Yeah.
and who ended up becoming mayor of New York City. Plus, there are X factors that you never know. But here's what we know. Ferrer and Green were in a circular firing squad and killed each other. Mark Green, and neither one of them has recovered.
Your point on the polling is
then.
well taken, but instead of maybe predicting who's going to win the thing, it would be somewhat illustrative if de Blasio's numbers were 39%, let's say. Then you would know that he was in trouble at this point.
His numbers have definitely improved. A lot of it has to do with Donald Trump, with him going out there making a force against Trump, being out there publicly hitting it.
Some of it has to do with Trump, and some of it has to do, and I sound like a broken record here, pre-K, safer city, stop and frisk, those are real accomplishments. You can try to give other people credit for it, but the people of the city have looked at de Blasio and say, with all his weaknesses, on the things he said he would do, he did, and that's what we elected a mayor for.
All right, we will leave it there. We will take a break, and when we come back, if you want to know what President Trump wants to do, don't follow his tweets, follow the money. What he wants to spend and what he wants to cut is all there in black and white and green.